to highlight here, and that relates to what you call transfer payment. What is transfer payment? Now you have the income, understanding transfer payment. Now transfer payment is one kind of expenditure. If government is making expenditure, government is not taking anything return for giving money. Suppose pensioners, they receive pension, but are they doing service today? No. This is transfer payment. Subsidy is also transfer payment. So, sometimes it is said we give so many subsidies. And then we come to the conclusion targeting the subsidies. You give subsidies only to those who deserve it. But this is not happening. You are giving subsidies to those who do not deserve it. This means your social justice is not achieved. So the point that I want to highlight here, that these transfer payments mean subsidies of various kinds must be, and they have been studied also. But when the same thing happens, who will take the decision? That is not being taken. And you take this petroleum product, gas. Yesterday one report was there, Reed Parikh report on energy, you were expert on energy. So try to understand, what did he say? Imposed perhaps, if I remember, 5 rupees raise the rate of diesel. Gas cylinder not 9, 6. I mean why? He suggests that the petroleum subsidy going to whom? Cut it, reduce it. But did you know, when it came from the ministry, perhaps 5-6 months back, 6 cylinder will be given at the control rate, you can say, or administered private, and rest you have to pay at the market rate, roughly 1,000 and something. What happened? Delhi government says, I will give 9. To whom? To the poor people. Again, apparently thinks it's all right. But whichever state has done 9, 12, whatever it may be, that benefit interest comes, that political aspects come, that getting votes come in the future. So my point here is, if you accept, if somebody is recommending certain aspects, that body has studied it from economic angle, administrative angle, but the decisions from political point of view, they are not accepted. So this deficit is continuing. So in our country, as you state, there is a history of deficit. History of deficit. History in the sense, revenue deficit was not there in our budget till 79-80. Revenue deficit was not there. Rather, in plan, you used to say surplus from the budget. To finance plan, that clause has gone now. Because from 79-80, central government is entering revenue deficit. As you know, revenue means current expenditure, current income, and your current income is insufficient to meet the current expenditure. You have seen the figure, you have the fiscal revenue deficit. Now, the question is, why these revenue subsidies are given? You can cut it, but there is no, what I say, political will to cut. So there are one term we use these days, we say there are 3 kinds of deficits that we are having today. One is your this fiscal deficit. which I have been taught. Another deficit we call current account deficit. It relates to balance of payments. Though they are separate, but impact is there. Then sometimes we use the term that is governance deficit. They were not government problems. So many. It is not confined to one sector. So many. So the question is, who is concerned about this fiscal deficit? And we use the term what? There should be fiscal consolidation. This means what? Increasing revenue, reducing deficit. Consolidate, take effort. Question is, how can you consolidate? There is an act.
There is a question.
Subsidies are given for a reason. Subsidies are given for a reason.
Yes.
Now cutting down the subsidy just for the sake of decreasing fiscal deficit. Means how is it justified?
Which deficit you are talking about? Because there are 20 kinds of deficit government is given.
I think revenue
But
deficit,
if you
subsidy will cut the revenue deficit. If you cut the subsidy,
No,
they'll cut down the
I am
revenue deficit.
saying this is general proposition. Which deficit you want to cut? I want to say there should be targeted deficit, a targeted subsidy, those who deserve. Those who do not deserve should not be subsidized. There you can cut, but the question is, which deficit you have in mind that should be cut or not cut? Particular area.
No, I think the point is general that
Yes, that way. No, in general I am saying yes, it should be cut. But the question is, when you talk, be specific. You cut this subsidy. Because I am also saying all subsidies are not bad. But if I say, suppose free education given, primary school children, rural areas in towns also. I am not saying that it should be cut. Primary health centers, people are going there, getting treatment, a small disease. I am not saying that it should be cut. They are getting free treatment. The question is, what kind of subsidies that, take for example here, and be critical. Why Air India should lose? Because loss is what? Your deficit increasing. Can you analyze this? So the question I have been giving is broad. You try to understand which subsidy should be cut, which should continue, and which should increase also. I am not saying totally reduce, totally abandon or abolish. There are areas we need to give more subsidy. That also you have to identify. So I am not saying in general, I am simply suggesting to you, you try to understand the problems. Subsidies are there, they are giving large, and these subsidies may be withdrawn from particular sector, particular people. But for the government, what is the problem? That due to various reasons, to my mind, it is mainly political, vested interest, that they continue this. They do not want to curb it. They do not want to control it. And we economically, in a rational manner, talk, let there be fiscal consolidation. This speaks what? Reduce expenditure, increase revenue. That is the main thing. And if you do this, your interest payment will be reduced. So you have to be clear in mind that if you want to do how. Now let me say, government passed a legislation to keep control on itself. That legislation is known as Fiscal Management, FRBM.
fiscal
Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management. This is And if I remember, it was passed in 2003, implemented to this. Mind the term, fiscal responsibility. You be responsible, government, and manage budget. What does it speak? Keep your expenditure within limits. In 2004, Chidambaram became finance minister after the collapse of the earlier government. His first action was keep this bill in abeyance for 2 years. Means we will spend more. Then what happened to fiscal deficit, to expenditure? The question is, this bill is meant to keep government under control, and government itself doesn't want to be controlled. So this act is not working properly. This was adopted with very fanfare. It happened in so many countries, New Zealand or some other countries. We cited number of examples, Australia, etc. passed this legislation. Not only this, some of the state governments also passed this legislation in India. Are they being followed? Behind? No, what is your question? I'm not getting. Please, no problem. Not want to? You want the rationality for deferment of the implementation of the act from the side of the finance minister. Apparently, his argument was that the country is having at that point of time a particular position in which this act cannot be implemented, so I am keeping it in abeyance. This is one apparent reason, but also keep in mind why his government is not sincere towards that act. When I say political, you go to the political economy of formation of this act. This act was passed by the Vajpayee government. His first action was to defer it. It was more political, to my mind. Second, when this act was, this was presented in Parliament, if I remember right, 2000. It took years to pass. It went to the Parliamentary Standing Committee. And who was the chairman? The Congress member of Parliament, who is now Governor of Punjab. He said, why should government control itself for expenditure? Because government has number of limitations. Government has to do something for the people. So why are you binding the government not to spend? This was the argument. And if you see the original bill and actual bill, then you can judge how it is diluted. It was passed anyhow, but it is with perfect dilution. Because the particular, I may say, Congress government was not eager that such kind of control should be there. When I said earlier also, please note this fact, no government wants to spend less. All government wants to spend more. So Congress has been in power Why should they like that you bind me not to spend more? So one thing, passing the act, implementing the act in letter and spirit. The government is following this act. Under this act, there is a provision, action taken in that particular year as per fiscal responsibility. The government presents that action with the budget documents. But where is the spirit behind? So the act is not, to my mind, is implemented in both letter and spirit. So you pass the act, but what is the impact on the ground that is more important for you to understand? So what the government is doing, suppose deficit is there, then how is government getting money? Borrowing is one aspect, but you know that even the Reserve Bank there is one thing you might be doing, WMA. It is called Ways and Means Advances. Ways and means means suppose government today has no money, so it borrows from RBI for 90 days, 180 days, then it is to 40 days. It is changed now, completely. And this borrowing of the government is actually Reserve Bank government says monetization of deficit. This adds money supply. But again I would say, perhaps Rangan was there, so there was an agreement between Reserve Bank and government that the borrowing should not go this amount, this limit. This is working. To avoid that particular clause, the government devised other means to get more money, to finance it. So the point is, I have made, you see again page 6. There are certain page 6 and just see after 3 lines what it says, following policy options could be considered. This is a part of that, I can say, fiscal consolidation. Cap the total public debt as a proportion of GDP. The Finance Commission, not Finance Commission, also recommended that the GDP should be this percentage for a 70% of GDP. Then here again, I have pointed out, revisit the public account borrowing, particularly small savings, and then third is revise FRBM Act. The Act may be revised. A small saving there, these are certain details which I could not talk much because the small savings is something different. It is actually collected from the state, post office, government fund, etc. And post office savings deposit, the estate in which it is collected, the amount goes to as a loan to that particular estate. There are certain provisions. Here it is said that it should be a little bit rationalized for something like this. So you have to consider so many things, but in the end that I have given on page 6 itself, what are the lessons of our discussion of this fiscal policy that should be taken into account. The only thing I would say that the government should focus on budget deficits and should not consider only budget deficits. Controlling budget deficit would be a misleading aspect. That's why I say which expenditure, which part. So, and then in this context it is essential what I have noted here, government should consider its consumption, its investment, taxation, deficit, and also growth rate. This consumption, investment, etc. endogenously determine government can do it. Exogenous factors are not so much dominant. So you have to, and then revenue raising tax reform, which we have been talking here, and this is what I wanted to say about this. Yes, what was your question? I end it here, but if you have any questions.
Is fiscal deficit justifiable at all? Is fiscal deficit justifiable at all?
No, I have already said it is justifiable. The question is, if you are borrowing, where you are spending. I have already said, if borrowing is 5 lakh crore, more than, and your capital expenditure is 2 lakh crore something, so where 3 lakh crore going means large amount is meeting current deficit, revenue deficit. Revenue deficit is consumption. Our economic view is what? Debt must become self-financed. Means it should earn. Out of that earning repay debt. But here, the debt that you have taken, you have eaten. Then where is the paying capacity? Consider that as well.
Any other question?